the president of the coming pandemic, warned the White House of the coming pandemic. I just want to read these words to you, what Peter Navarro wrote in January. He said, "The lack of immune protection or an existing cure or vaccine would leave Americans defenseless in the case of a full-blown coronavirus outbreak in the U.S. This lack of protection elevates the risk of the coronavirus evolving into a full-blown pandemic, imperiling the lives of millions of Americans." In one worst-case scenario cited in the memo, Navarro warned that more than 500,000 Americans could die. And yet, weeks after that, John, you had Donald Trump at rallies saying that in April, when it warms up, this will miraculously go away. Put this in context with, I suppose you could say, with 9/11, the memos warning of al-Qaeda attacks using airplanes, maybe missed signals FDR didn't pick up on before Pearl Harbor. I really don't know, though, what parallel there can be, because so many more people are going to die because of these missed signals.
Yeah, I'm wary of those analogies, partly because al-Qaeda, the Japanese government, they had a certain agency. And so you're talking about an enemy who was making decisions about when to strike you. The 9/11 memo said, al-Qaeda determined to strike in U.S. And I think what the Bush administration would say is, well, yes, they already have. What do you got? That was more perspective. This was pretty prescriptive. And I think that's what makes this memo and this crisis all the more interesting and all the more tragic. Ed talked about Greek tragedy. The issue here, it seems to me, is, are we going to be a nation governed by reason and facts? Are we an Enlightenment-influenced nation, uppercase E? Or are we a tribal collection of states and Trump supporters and Trump detractors who spend our time banging into each other instead of actually engaging with modernity and moving forward? Make no mistake, you've been talking about this. When the president goes out there every afternoon, early evening, he is going out there because he knows what the reality is, and he knows that the reality does not bathe him in glory. And so he is telling the American people, or that part of the American people who are open to his arguments — they aren't arguments, they're assertions — his assertions that nobody saw it coming. Well, this guy who talks about Trump time, this guy whom is going to become a hero of the center left that everybody disliked until the memo came out, but that's the way it goes. It's just not true. And so, because the president is ill-served by his own instincts, his own essential lack of interest in anything approaching long-term planning, he's a day trader, to use your phrase, because that mindset, that temperament, has endangered the United States in a way we have not been economically endangered since 1933. And in terms of health, as you just showed, we are losing more people than in many of the wars we spend time studying. This is a calamity. It's an absolute calamity. And the tragedy of this will be, there were people who saw it coming. And this is not, just to underscore this is not partisan. I'm not saying this because I think the president is temperamentally ill-suited to be president. I do think the president is temperamentally ill-suited to his office. But it doesn't matter. People you disagree with on 80% of things can get 20% right. That's very hard to find that 20% here. And it's changing, affecting anyway, everything about us, everything. And you don't want to be partisan in this moment. You don't want to bang on the high chair. You know, I understand all that. But at the same time, that enlightenment injunction, which is follow the facts, this is what the facts are saying. So I would just urge folks, look at the facts. Don't listen to the spin.
So, Joe, if you look at January 30th, Trump's quote is, "We think we have it well under control." And then think about this. Trump rolled back much of the progress that Obama made to strengthen global and health security. I'm reading from someone's opinion piece. He proposed draconian cuts to the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control
These are all
and Prevention,
facts.
Agency for International
You can look at his
Development.
budget requests.
He dismissed the top White House officials in charge of global health security. And to be blunt, I am concerned that the Trump administration short-sighted policies have left us unprepared for a dangerous epidemic that will come sooner or later. That is 3 days earlier, January 27th, Joe Biden telling the country and trying to tell the president that a pandemic is on the way. And here's the problem. I say this with all seriousness, Joe, you know, because we knew him long before the campaign and we talked to him about this during the campaign and we shared it with our viewers. He doesn't read. He doesn't read. So if Peter Navarro wrote something or Biden wrote something, he does not read. Everything comes at him. He hears it on TV.
Right. Well,
this is how he gets his info.
And that's been a concern of people that have been trying to brief him since he first got into the White House. It's something that we asked him early in the campaign. Do you read? I asked, can you read? Are you capable of reading? And Willie, I think the biggest lie, and Donald Trump lies in all of these press conferences, we talked specifically, and again, this is not opinion, it's fact, that he lied about testing yesterday, said it was not the federal government's job, it was never the federal government's job. It actually was up until February 29th when the FDA finally gave up on the federal government because they had botched this so badly that the FDA said we would shut you down, CDC, if you were a private entity. But another big lie is when Donald Trump says nobody saw this coming. Peter Navarro wrote this memo on January 29th.
Yeah.
Said 500,000 Americans could die if we don't get this right. Joe Biden, 2 days earlier, wrote an op-ed in the USA Today warning of the pandemic that was coming. Joe Biden saw this coming. Donald Trump didn't see this coming. Donald Trump was still saying it was going to go away when it was warm. We only have 11 people who are sick.
He was hearing what he wanted to hear.
Yeah, that same week that Biden wrote that memo, he told CNBC he wasn't worried at all. It was just one person coming in from China. But there it was, Sleepy Joe Biden. I don't know. They may need to come up with another name than Sleepy. Prescient Joe Biden, perhaps. That same week said that this was going to be a serious problem, that the outbreak is going to cause a real problem. But you can even go back, Willie, to 2019, when HHS Secretary Azar was asked in a conference in 2019 what keeps him up at night. And he said, well, what keeps everybody up at night in this room? A pandemic. When the next pandemic comes, will we be prepared? He saw it coming. Bill Gates predicted it in 2015. George W. Bush raised fears about it in 2005. The question is, who could have seen this coming? The answer, everybody but Donald Trump. Everybody but Donald Trump and those who decided they were going to be mouthpieces for Donald Trump in playing down the threat that everybody saw coming.
Yeah, you mentioned George W. Bush. There's been a lot written in the last couple of days that he was obsessed with this, both privately and with his team, that this was coming and we had to be ready for it. The Obama administration, a group famously wrote a pandemic playbook, was sitting there in the White House waiting for the Trump administration. They dismissed it, which would have signaled, hey, this happened on New Year's Eve in Wuhan, China. We need to start preparing now, start making the PPE, start getting those ventilators out. It's headed our way. The Trump administration ignored that playbook through its